first met Joe through, I consider you, Joe, a mentor, and over the last year we've talked a lot, and I look at David Gerard DiCarlo, who is my other mentor, who has been so supportive of me over the years, who introduced us 25 years ago or so. And the thing that's always impressed me is that you don't talk about yourself. So I'm really looking forward to talking about you a little bit tonight, you know? And so as Arthur started to talk about earlier tonight, I mean, so Joe is a person whose parents were born in Germany, and they leave after Kristallnacht, which must have been an unbelievably courageous decision and a frightful decision, and they moved to Palestine, which is now, you know, of course now Israel, but then under British rule. And Joe, young baby Joseph, is born. And at some point, I guess you're 13 or 14 years old, and your parents think you should have another kind of an education, a better education, and you are sent over here. And the English language you have is basically, you've told me, is what you knew from John Wayne movies. So you knew yep and yes, ma'am. So what's it like to be on a boat coming into America at age 14 years of age? I mean, what is that like, Joe?
Well, you know, when you're a young kid, and when you're a young kid growing up in 1948, Palestine became Israel, obviously, after the War of Independence. And things were not so great there at the time, from an economic point of view. And, you know, food stamps, food rations. So when you have an opportunity after that to come to America, you're giddy with joy and opportunity. So the land of opportunity is still there. And I traveled by, you know, boat by myself over here. So it's the first trip that you took overseas, and I shared a cabin with 5 other young adults. So the trip itself was momentous in terms of, so I think we remember we came to Halifax, Nova Scotia at the time, because the ship was carrying citrus also at the time, so we unloaded a shipment of citrus, and that's the first time I've seen snow in Halifax. It was February. It was a little cold. I only had short pants. I didn't have long pants at the time. And I discovered that people were calling from Halifax to the United States, and my uncle and aunt lived in the United States. I was going to live with them. So I said, how do you do that? I said, well, there's this thing called collect call. And those of you who remember, you can still dial a number and you can call collect. So I called collect to my aunt, and my aunt is my mother's sister. She was also German and quite frugal at the time. And I only found out how frugal she was a little afterwards, when I had to pay for my own phone calls when I lived with them. But that was an amazing experience. And I remember, so I figured out how to make phone calls and what snow was all about. And then we sailed from Halifax to New York City. And then coming into New York City harbor, we came in at dusk, and we parked outside. We laid anchor there because we were going in the morning. And I remember seeing the Statue of Liberty there, and kind of looking at her in twilight. And there was a big sign, I remember, at the time, and with my broken English, I read E-S-S-O. I said, oh, that's Essesso. And that was the old Esso company, which hence became the Exxon company. And those were early memories. I was frightened to death, but I was excited also at the same time. And that's how it all started. And as a young boy, what you're trying to do is survive. And survival in a different environment is what I had to do. I didn't have any choices. So being thrown in a different environment was retrospectively very difficult, and it obviously forms a lot of the nightmares that I still have and a few other things that I still experience. But at the time, it was very exciting, and it was tremendous. And the joy that I felt that night has been with me for the rest of my life in the United States. So I'm probably a more rabid American than most native-born Americans ever will be.